So, Joe, you were just sharing some pretty crazy stats on the marketing and sales side. You mind sharing that with everybody?
Yeah, there's two things that really caught my eye as a marketer. The first stat is that 40% of the content that you put into the marketplace actually pushes your prospect away from the sale because it's the wrong message at the wrong time to the wrong person. It's basically intrusive. And the second one is that if you can respond back to your prospects within 5 minutes of them raising their hand to become a lead, they're 400% more likely to convert. So imagine that. And then you start thinking about the world of AI and how it can enable both of those things. And it starts to get really interesting.
Wow. Just think about, 400%. That is a crazy statistic. So we just had to start off with that. I'm so excited to be joined by Joe Stolte here on the Marketing Minds podcast. Joe and I are friends. We've known each other for a while, both out here in Austin. He is a serial entrepreneur, 5-time technology founder, multiple successful exits, including lottery.com and GrowFlow. He's also now the founder and CEO of daily.ai, which is an AI newsletter business that basically generates newsletters using the power of AI, boasts 40 to 60% open rates. So talk about another crazy marketing stat. We're definitely going to dive into that. But Joe, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Dude, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me, Alaric.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited because today we're going to dive into all things AI. You are, one of the people that I think of when I think of, being at the forefront of AI and also in our little corner of the world in marketing and, entrepreneurship and business growth and online businesses. So what I'd love to hear, how is 40 to 60% open rates possible? Now, I know some of this because I know some of the background, but just for everybody here, they might hear that. It just sounds unbelievable because I know people struggling to get 20% open rates these days. How is that possible with daily AI and what you're doing and the way you run newsletters?
Yeah, fun fact, 81.23% of all of our customers have a 40% or greater open rate.
Wow.
And if you already had a good open rate, we're talking 70s or 80% open rate. So I think what it comes down to is the major flaw that's taking place in all things that are AI. You see, most people are taking generative AI and kind of wrapping it around an existing process or a service. And I commend them for that. That's amazing. I'm a capitalist. I want everybody to win. It's also a shallow lift because the real value, especially when it comes to marketing, is in the data. It's in something that I call iterative intelligence. So the way Daily AI works is we built a newsletter platform for other small business owners and big thought leaders, right? So we've done the newsletters for everybody from Robert Kennedy Jr., Peter Diamandis, Chris Voss, Dan Sullivan, Dan Martell, JJ Virgin, Joe Polish, and on, but also like 200 small business customers that you've never heard of, Rodin Roofings of the world, or the plastic surgeon in the East Coast that we work with, or the advisors, the consultants, the CPAs, whatever. But the secret sauce is actually pretty simple. When we first started this company, we actually got access to the OpenAI API before ChatGPT came out, because my business partner in this business is a guy named Dr. Peter Diamandis, and he's a sort of a world-renowned, multiple New York Times best-selling author and futurist. And basically, he's got friends in high places. I don't want to be a name drop even more here. And so we got access to it, and we made a big bet. And we said that we think the future of marketing, as generative AI goes and becomes more propagated, is going to go from one to many to one to one. So the perfect segmentation of one, right message to the right person at the right channel with the right time with the right offer. It's the holy grail of marketing, right? And so we said, wow, this could actually enable that. And so that was our big bet. So we built the platform from the ground up so that each individual subscriber on your list can get a personalized version of your newsletter based on what they've clicked on in the past. Because as a marketer, I like to say there's 3 forms of truth. There's what we think the market wants. There's what they say that they want. And then there's what they actually click on. And those are almost always 3 different things, right? So we want to over-index on that third one. What do they click on? So every time someone opens a newsletter of one of our customers, our machine learning algorithm in the background is watching what everybody clicks on, and it's getting smarter and smarter and smarter. What subject lines, what content, what are we curating, what are we putting, how are we writing it, et cetera. And that's really the magic behind the 40% open rate. It's literally machine learning. It's math. It's looking at every individual send and like having a little machine learning data scientist watching what you're doing and making each edition better, all the way down to the individual subscriber level if you choose that. Many don't, some do. So like if Alaric was opening our AI newsletter, which we call AI Insider, there's about 44,000 people that read it 5 days a week, 20 cents a month. You could get your own personalized version of it where it'll say Alaric's picks, and it's literally just picking content that it thinks that you would be interested in. The other thing is we don't just send your content and we don't write like long form copy. we have something we've built called the perspective engine. It goes out and looks at up to 3 million pieces of content every day on your behalf. It filters out negative news, clickbaits, competitors, anything that you don't want in there as a customer. And it brings in things that it knows your audience is going to click on that aren't competitive with you. Because we started with the premise that was like, hey, what's in it for them? Right? What does the end prospect actually want? Because we know the game isn't about just showing them our shiny stuff. It is that at the right time. We want to give the right offer at the right time. But what it really comes down to is how do you capture, keep, and convert the attention of your ideal buyer? And I could keep going, but that's the secret behind the 40% open rate. It's actually math. Instead of just using AI to write newsletters or summarize stuff, which quite frankly, anybody with like a make.com like login and ChatGPT could do, it's this very complex machine learning algorithm that we've built on the background that's able to do that. And I'll give you one example of how this benefits everybody. So we did the newsletter for Robert Kennedy Jr. during his presidential campaign. And, you know, I've met him a handful of times. I happen to like Bobby. From what I know, he seems like a really good guy, but it's not an endorsement or an indictment of the man's politics. He's just a customer, or was, right? And so when he came onto our platform, he had a lot of subscribers, as you can imagine. I'm not allowed to say how many, but about 20% of his subscribers already opened newsletters on other customers' newsletters on our platform. So our AI already knows when they're opening, what subject lines are resonating with them. So when you go to warm up a big list, you don't just blast them all at once. You have to kind of drip it out. Well, who should you drip it out to? Probably to the people that you know are going to open, because you know when they open and what they're into, right? So that's the kind of advantage that we've built. And we've got 1.5 billion interaction data points to help predict how to land that in the primary inbox, how to get them to open, and how to get them to come back and click. I could keep going, but that's the long answer. That's how we get 40% or greater open rates pretty consistently for 8 out of 10 people that try our product.
I love it. I love the, how it comes back, because we're talking about AI and technology and crafting and curating these individual newsletters, but it comes back to, that very human principle of what's in it for them. And I know, we both know Joe Polish and, popularizing a lot of that too with, his book as well. And, it's really asking like, what is in it for that person who's opening? And no wonder you have really high open rates if you're thinking about that person on the other side. And I think the thing I want to explore, I'm curious your perspective on this, because what you're doing is, and I want everybody listening or watching, because you probably picked this up, but if you missed it, these are personalized emails. So most people, when they have a newsletter, they're sending out an email to everybody. If you have like, let's say 40,000 people on a newsletter, it's the same newsletter. Maybe AI helps you write it and you're sending it out. What you're talking about, Joe, on your side is like AI actually personalizing every single person's newsletter, which is just a whole different category. So I'm very curious, what do you see as the, where AI is going with personalization? Because that type of thing used to not be possible at all, really, in the past, or used to be limited to like, if you had to be like a Google or a Facebook that had a gigantic algorithm. But now entrepreneurs can do this. Where do you see this type of personalization going in the future with AI and everything that's coming out?
Yeah, our big vision is that every small business, and when I say small business, I mean, if you have less than 100 employees, you're technically a small business. There's lots of companies that have, multiple 9 figures and less than 100 employees. But if you're a small business, our vision is that every small business can market without being a marketer. That's what we think AI enables at the personal level. Again, it's right message to the right person on the right channel at the right time. A lot of that is math and looking at your metadata and how you behave and what you actually want. And I'll talk about something that's a little bit advanced. I call it fluid intent. I just made this word up. In the game of capturing, keeping, and converting attention, we really want to understand, like, what is the intention behind your prospect or the market or the human being that you're trying to get their attention? What's their intention? What do they want? What are they trying to accomplish in any given moment, right? And intent is fluid. I mean, it changes so fast. If you think about it, like on September 10th, you had a very different intent than September 10th, 2001. You had a very different intent than you did on September 12th. Why is that? Because something really important happened in the middle there, right? We had 9/11 here in the United States. And something like that happens to our nervous system like every 5 or 10 minutes or less when you're on social media. There's just constant bombardment and hijacking of your intention. And where your intention goes, your intent changes, right? So we want to know, what's the intent? What is their intent right now? Is the intent in a place where I should make an offer? Because the more offers that you make, the more money that you make. All things else held equally, right? And so I think with marketing going from one to many to one to one, I think it stops being intrusive. I think it stops being obnoxious. And I think it starts to be very pleasant. It's like exactly what you're looking for. You know, you've probably had this experience, Alric, or heard about it, especially on YouTube and as an advertiser, where it's like you get advertised a product that you're like, I swear they're listening to my mic and listening in on my conversations, right? That's how might know that a woman is pregnant before she knows herself, because they're watching all this metadata and intent, and they're basically correlating that it's highly likely that this person is pregnant. And when I say they, it's actually their AI algorithms that are doing this, right? So I actually think marketing just becomes a lot more useful, right? It just becomes like the right offer at the right time. You know, like this morning I woke up and I think about this stuff a lot. I take supplements every morning, and I was kind of running on my low on my B complex, and and yes, there's a subscription on Amazon, but I travel a lot. It doesn't always hit right. Like I had to manually go in and order. Well, if I were to get a ping from Amazon right in that moment that was like, hey, you're probably low on B complex, you order it pretty frequently around this time, do you want it? I would have been like, bink, one touch, thank you, perfect marketing. That's where I think it goes. I think it's like understanding intent, understanding where people are at, and then being able to serve them with what they need when they want it in a way that's less intrusive and more authentic.
Love that. And it makes so much sense. The ad platforms are doing that exact thing as well, is really, and it's something we've talked about, on this podcast as well, is basically how advertising and marketing is really getting a lot more granular and a lot more targeted, a lot more specific. And even YouTube has had a shift with demand gen, where it used to be just kind of the main in-stream ads or other formats. Now you've got in-stream ads, you got in-feed ads, you got short ads, you got ads that pop up in Gmail and Discover in one campaign. And Google's saying, we know when people want to see your ad and what order people want to see your ad. Facebook's been doing that for quite some time in a different capacity. And, and they're ramping that up too, where now there's more open targeting. It's just like, hey, our AI is going to determine, what people want to see. And I think even recently, Mark Zuckerberg talked about how, and it's kind of funny because I talked about the YouTube ads versus Facebook ads, but it was very interesting. He talked about how he wanted to, basically make it so that you could just say, hey, here's my goal, go and create the creatives using AI and the targeting using AI to achieve this goal, which I think is really interesting to look at, how custom everything's going to be. So I love it. I'm curious, expanding this even further. So of course we have daily AI. We're going to dive deeper into that, dive deeper into, I also am excited to get some of your business building methodology and strategies, because you've definitely provided me a lot of advice, which I appreciated. And you've had so much experience scaling and exiting multiple different companies. So we'll talk about that. But continuing on the AI train, are there other AI tools, marketing strategies, other things that you think are the future that people should really be focusing on right now, or things that you're using that you'd recommend in the world of AI and AI marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two big ones. They're from the same type of algorithm. And it's a dovetail to what you just talked about, which is last week, maybe 8 days ago, Zuckerberg came out on the earnings report and talked about the changes they're making to Meta. This is my next hypothesis. If we're going from one to many to one, I've been saying this for about a year and a half, that marketing is going to become a member matching algorithm where all you do literally is upload your offer and they will do everything. They'll make the creative, they'll write the copy, they'll do the distribution, they'll do the campaigning, they'll figure out the split tests. And then basically, if your offer is incredible, the thing that you sell is so valuable, then the economic exchange will mean that you acquire customers at a profit. It means that the algorithms can go find customers for cheaper than what you charge. And so you'll make money. And if you don't, then you'll have to either make it up on lifetime customer value or iterate or go out of business. And you can tell that this is happening because that's thing number one. Just buy ads. The most sophisticated AI marketing tool on the planet right now is the YouTube algorithm, right, for advertising, followed very closely by Meta. And some could make the case for TikTok, depending on the industry that you're in, if it's CPG and the age demographics and so on and so forth. And if you want to know where everybody's getting their cues from, pay attention to TikTok, because everything that Zuck is talking about doing, TikTok has already been doing, right? They already haven't like they're already building AI models where they will make the AI influencer manufacture the background, the script, the voice, exactly how your target market wants it based on what you're selling. So everybody's getting their cues from TikTok, love it or hate it. They're leading the way. They're leading the way on paid. They're also leading the way, or at least they were, on organic. And that's the second big opportunity is right now. So for example, this is a right now thing, not even where it's going. Doing stuff like this, creating content, long form and short form content, it's literally free CPMs. It's free eyeballs. Okay. Like I get a little bummed out on Instagram when I post a short form reel and only 500 to 700 people see it. But have you ever seen a picture of 500 or 700 people? Like it's a lot of people, and you can literally do that for free. And if you get shot on target, then you can get in front of millions of people, and that doesn't cost you anything but your creative effort. Because right now the game is basically, as we all know, all of the algorithms, the Metas, the Instagrams, and the YouTubes have basically said, hey, the best creative wins. We actually don't care about your follower count. We're just going to let the best creative win. And so because of that, you can just get great at creative and get an incredible leverage and access to people. And that doesn't cost you anything but your time and your creativity. So if you've got more money than time, then you can buy your way in, and that's awesome. And it's never been easier. And if you have more time than money, then you can go get really sharp on the creative, or you can do both. I'm an and guy, not an or guy. And so I would love to talk about whiz-bang AI tools, of which there is a lot. We can get into that. I just think that those are the two places that are having the biggest impact right now. There's one last thing that I want to say that most people won't find as obvious. My third big prediction, hypothesis, if you will, is that if advertising becomes one-to-one member matching algorithm where you just upload your offer and they do the rest, and the best offer wins, the best offers are results as a service. Okay. Like I don't get paid as a service provider until the customer, client, patient gets the result, right? So there will be people in the world, providers in the world that structure their offers like that, and they will clean up. If you do that right now, it is a huge, tremendous advantage. But my prediction is that in our lifetimes, it won't be an advantage. It'll just be the way we do business. It'll be what people expect. There will be no trust recession because it's literally like, no, you don't get paid until I do the thing I said I was going to do. Because those are the best offers. Let's be honest. When you study how to create an incredible offer strategically, if you can figure out a way to do that, then you're going to win. And I'll give you an example. So I've had people push back and say, well, yeah, what if I'm a roofing company and I do roofs for people's houses? Like I have upfront costs and all of that. Well, get creative. Okay. Maybe you have 20% profit margin on each job. And then your guarantee is like, I'll get the job done on time and on budget or under, or I will pay you my profit, which is 20% per job. Right. So it's not quite the same, but we're moving in that direction. That's my third big prediction, is that if it's all about the offer, the best offers are results. So a lot of value exchange will just be results as a service.
Very, very interesting. And taking it back to the fundamentals on each of these too, from the offer, how can you make it more irresistible, more geared towards what the clients want and need, also, doubling down on the results and adding in that way of looking at that. And then also, like you were talking about, the platforms, both organic and ads, such a big opportunity right now. And, of course, talking about YouTube, but also Meta and TikTok and all these different platforms. And so, there's so much opportunity and to trade time, money, or both. And I'm also a big both person as well. So, all of the above, you might as well get advantage on both sides. So I really appreciate that. I'll take you up on some of those AI tools.
Yeah.
That might be a little nugget to save as we get closer to later on in the episode. So we'll put a little pin in that for now, but I do want to hear maybe a rapid fire, some of your favorite.
Everybody loves a good list of AI tools.
Everybody
got
loves
mine.
it, though. And especially from you. I mean, I'm excited to hear some of the tools that you've got. And so, but before we dive into that, and I also want to dive a little deeper into daily AI and understanding that as well in a second. But one thing I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about is your business building methodology, because you have built multiple successful businesses, very successful exits. We're talking in the, hundreds of millions, for one of them with, your lottery.com and then, other exits as well with GrowFlow. Like, how do you, really look at building a business, especially one that's designed to exit and create these really great, outcomes for yourself, investors, people involved? How do you think about that?
Yeah, the very good question. It depends on where the stage is. I don't actually build businesses to sell them, but I will always ask my team, what can we do today to build the business that we would be proud to buy? Because in the early days, the same things that it takes to be a great company and get it off the ground and create value and take action and get momentum, they're actually very similar to what you would do if you were going to sell it anyway. If acquirer is going to come in and look at your business, they all at some level are kind of looking for the same thing. They want to see if it's a recurring revenue business, like net revenue retention is up and to the right, contribution margin is healthy and growing. And as you scale, those two numbers get better, not worse, right? And I could keep going, but those are just three big ones, right? Like, is the amount of money that you're making from each customer per month going up, meaning like they're sticking around and you're selling them more stuff, therefore moving your margins up? And does that break as you get bigger because you've got some humans in there turning silent cranks, or is it actually all automated? Because I come from the software world, and in the software world, there's a lot of upfront risk. You have to have a clear hypothesis. You have to be really laser sharp on the biggest assumption that you're validating, because you don't have a lot of time, because time is money effectively. And so you may get 3 or 4 max shots at testing an idea in the marketplace, right? And so you have to be really, really good at figuring out what those are, and then using data to really nail it down. Otherwise, you can spin your wheels and you run out of time, and it's you're gonna die. So yeah, that's it. So I think about it first and foremost from how do we build a great company, and I think in the beginning it all starts with your customer. Who do you want to be a hero to? Like a long time ago, I want to say more than 15 years ago, I heard Jeff Walker, the infamous OG marketer that created the product launch formula. I heard him ask that question. I later found out, I believe that Dan Sullivan was the originator of that question. I've gotten to know Dan pretty well over the last couple of years. But who do you want to be a hero to? And that question's important, because it's like, once you're in the game long enough, you can make money fairly easily once you know how to exchange value and ask for the sale, right? But when you start asking the question, who do you want to be a hero to? It's actually like, who do I want to help? There's an extra layer of purpose in there, because when you have that extra layer of purpose, when you hit that rough patch as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that'll pull you through. You have a reason why you're doing it. So I'd love to start with that question. And if I have conviction around that question, I can give my team conviction. I can give investors conviction. I can give other customers conviction. And I can also get a cameo from my daughter. Say hi, baby.
Oh.
Yeah, so I always start with who. Who am I serving, and who do I want to be a hero to? And I could hammer on this a lot, but I'll say this one last thing. People always say in business, you want to get your prospect from where they are to where they want to be, from point A to point B. I like to say that I want to be able to see point C, which is the bigger future for them that they can't see for themselves. I call that transformation. I'm always looking to what's the identity transformation that takes place when you buy the thing that I'm selling, right? So for example, I also teach experienced entrepreneurs like how to use AI meaningfully in their business without wasting their time. The transformation that I'm selling is like, how do I help them go from feeling like left behind to ahead of the curve where they can grow their business with AI? Because they're really good at what they do, and it's not their first time around the block. So I know that it's that transformation. So the first thing is who am I really wanting to be a hero to? The next thing is like, what do they want? What do they really want? What are their biggest problems? What are the deepest problems that I could solve for the maximum amount of profit? And you have to get those things right, man. Because if you don't get those things right and you don't pick your market efficiently, then you're pushing the boulder uphill, right? And in a market, I want to see deep pain, deep pockets, high accessibility, and growth. If I don't see those 4 things, then we can win in that market, but it's just not going to be the same. It's the difference between trying really hard and like breaking yourself and sleeping under your desk and all that stuff versus like feeling like you caught lightning in a bottle. And so if we nail those things right, then a lot of our job is done from the very beginning, right? Just by picking the right game, picking the right market. Then from there, it's literally like, how do I create as much value as possible and charge less? Is there a scenario where I can, trade, you give me $1, I'll give you back $100 in value? Because that's the next level that's my offer. My offer needs to be extraordinarily good, and I need to be able to deliver it in a way that adds crazy value. If I nail all of those things and I just put the offer in front of the right market, the marketing and sales becomes irrelevant, right? Like Dan Kennedy famously said, it's the offer, stupid. And I think that was in context of like people arguing over like copy and headlines and all that. Because if you just put the right offer in front of the right people, this book here, if you're watching this video, the Boron Letters, like Gary Halbert talked about selling like to a starving artist or starving market. Right? If you're selling day-old cheeseburgers, the starving market would happily buy them because they don't have any food, right? So where's the greatest need? And if I put the right offer in front of the right audience, then the marketing and sales becomes irrelevant. Now, if that's true, imagine what happens when I start adding the marketing and sales. Now we're building a rocket ship. So that's literally like my playbook for starting a business. The last thing I'll say is that if I'm going to build a business and I have any chance that I'm ever going to sell it, I want to build a business that has an amazing multiple. Like I love coaching and masterminds and consulting and working one-on-one with people. The multiple on that business is not as good as the multiple on SaaS businesses, right? You can get an 8 to 12x multiple on revenue in SaaS, meaning like they will value your company 8 to 12 times what your revenue is. And basically every other business, they're going to look at something called EBITDA, which is basically your before tax profits, which is, a lot smaller number, and the multiplier is a lot smaller. So that's literally my whole playbook. If I nail the foundation and then I pick a vehicle like SaaS or software or AI, that's got a great multiple. If I decide to sail, I can get an unfair outsized outcome in my advantage, and that will give you that much more leverage. But just to be clear, even if it's the right SaaS vehicle or software, people still don't want to buy your business if your net revenue retention and your contribution margin isn't going up and it doesn't scale. They're still not going to buy it. But if I get all of those things right, then I feel like I'm creating the conditions to have an amazing win.
I love it. And it's also so clear how much of that goes back to some of the, kind of early principles in everything. And I think it's really good looking at that. And one thing that's interesting, because it's common in the world of business, but a little less common in a lot of the online businesses that maybe some of the people watching, might have, is you also build businesses with investors and people, on that side. What would you say are some of the pros and cons of bringing in investors into a business? What makes you want to build a business that has those types of investors? Like, I'm curious on that side of things as well, because I know it's a different experience than, maybe some of the people who might be watching have had if they've bootstrapped.
Yeah, raising outside capital. Let's go through the cons first. I want to scare you away before I invite you in. First of all, if you got into this game of entrepreneurship to have freedom, to write your own ticket, and to carve your own path, then don't raise money, because the minute you raise money, you have a boss. You're accountable to somebody else's money, even if they don't have a board seat in your company. But when you start raising bigger money, they're going to ask for a board seat. And you have a boss. Like every month or every quarter, I have to prepare well, I don't have to, I get to, I like to. But if you don't like this, you wouldn't want to do it. I prepare an investor update for all the people that invested in daily AI. And every 90 days, I'm working hard to make that investor update better than the last one, right? And so it's kind of like having a boss. So if you like that level of governance and accountability that doesn't scare you away, then great, this might be right for you. Look, and the other big con is that sometimes constraints breed the best creativity. And you can raise too much money too early, and that really messes things up. And if you don't know what you're doing with raising money, with valuations, you can really screw up the company in a bad way. Like you raise too much money and the valuation's too high. Later, you have to do what's called a down round, or you don't raise enough money and you sell too much of the company and it actually blows up and you realize, wow, I've raised so much money. I only own like 3% of the company and it's not worth much anymore. So you actually have to sell your piece of the company to other people. But the game that you're playing is that if Alaric comes into my business and he gives me $1 million and we value the business at 10 million, you now own 10% of my company. Well, the bet that I'm making with myself is that I can go out and make the business 5 or 10 or 20 times more valuable with the money that you gave me, because I'm not resource constrained. Instead of having to like hustle muscle everything by myself and be like the guy that's like does the harmonica and the playing the drums and riding the skates like the one-man band, I can actually go out and buy some great talent and I can give them equity, because there's this idea that we might sell the company in the future or take it public. And so inside of that, I can go get extraordinary talent from day one. If you're a great leader and you have access to capital, I'm playing the game of fate. Can I have so much faith in a future that doesn't exist that I can get capital and talent to come and help me build it? And that's what I'm good at. So that's what I did. I've built and sold a bootstrap business as well. And, it had a different set of challenges. I've currently also building a bootstrap business that's doing quite well. I understand that game as well. But my unique gift is like, I'm a great leader. I'm good at transferring faith and belief into other people and seeing things that don't exist and convincing them that we should go build them or make it happen. And having more money allows me to get higher caliber people. Now, could you get higher caliber people without raising money? Yeah, absolutely. It's called customer financing. Go do a big launch, make a bunch of money, and then go do everything I just said. It's just a slightly different game. Again, I'm an and person. So if I could do a launch and make a bunch of money and get customer financing, I'd still take the check up front, go get all those customers and have even more cash to hire more people and grow even faster. So it's a game. It's a game of speed. Okay. There's a game of speed. There's nothing wrong with having a bootstrap business that spits off beautiful profit. But, a lot of small businesses are doing between 1 and 3, maybe 4 million in revenue. And they just kind of hang out there. They do 30, 40% margins. They're making very good money. They've got their team taking care of stuff. It's not a bad way to live. You don't get to do that in startup land when you raise capital. There's kind of a invisible gun to your head that's like, go and go fast. It's always fast. It's always more. It's always go, go, go. And, until you get way down the line, you don't really earn the right to take a break. And even if you do nowadays with AI, there's like 17 kids from Y Combinator waiting to lap you around the block. There's some kid that was like on Twitch and he's like, PMF or die. He's like, look, he's just live streaming himself until they get to $1 million in ARR or something like that. I don't know if you heard about this, but it's like,
Yeah, I think I
cool.
did. Yeah.
Well, and that's cool because that kid doesn't have what I have, right? Like when I was that kid and I didn't have any experience, so I just needed to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks because I didn't know anything. But now that I'm up the experience curve, I can be a lot more patient. But that's the game. One is a game of speed and leadership and pulling people in and going as fast as you can, and the other one is just it's different. A lot of those things apply, but just not in the same ways.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's great, like looking at the different pros and cons and seeing what makes the most sense. And it's always interesting, hearing the different types of stories. Somebody who's bootstrapped myself, but hearing and I know you've had experience on both sides, so it's always very interesting hearing that side of things.
Well, I'll tell you a secret. A lot of my startup friends, they're in their mid-30s, early mid-30s or older. They are all quietly asking me, how do I build a business that I don't raise outside money and we just make a lot of money and live a good life? A lot of them are starting masterminds. It's hilarious. But yeah, like that's what people want. That's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with running a $3 million business that you never intend to sell, or a $3, $4, $5 million business. It's an amazing life. You can buy peace. It's extraordinary. The guy that's on his Series E or Series F funding with a multi-billion-dollar valuation, they all have gray hair too soon, right? They walk, if they're lucky, very lucky and very skilled and very prepared, they'll walk away with a giant pot of money. Everybody else gets a lot of gray hair. So there is definitely perks to both. And as I'm sitting here in my early 40s, like about to have my third kid, I love the venture back game. This is probably my last, never say never, but this is probably my last go around on that merry-go-round. And then I'm literally just going to build businesses that spit off profit for the rest of my life and not take a dime of outside capital because it's fun and I can chill and maybe my kids will run it one day, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Really, really valuable perspective there. And so I know one of the things that you help with, is also growing businesses on the AI, side and seeing, like, sharing how to use AI strategies. And we'll loop back to daily AI in a second, then we'll kind of close out with some of the AI marketing tools. But I'm curious, what are some of those strategies that you recommend that businesses can implement, maybe something actionable with AI to start seeing some of those results? Because I know you also have trainings on that side. You've done a lot in that. You're a big thought leader in all things AI. What are some more tactical or tangible strategies that people can apply to start implementing AI into their businesses?
Yeah, well, first of all, the most important thing that I recommend is use AI every day. If you're not using AI every day, then you haven't really embraced AI. It would be like electricity just came out and you're not using electricity every day. But the adoption curve for AI is going to be a lot more aggressive. So use it every day. Just build a muscle for whichever platform you like the best, whether that's Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, but use it every single day. I think as an entrepreneur or business owner, one of the most important things, regardless of you're bootstrapped or you're raising money, time is important, and speed of implementation is important, and having a very narrow focus on what the most important thing in your business is at any given time is very important. And as Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows, and the best way to direct focus is with a question. So for example, I have a prompt that I ask every Sunday to ChatGPT around how to help me manage my time better the following week. And the more I interact with it, the smarter it gets. If you go to dmjoe.com, like the letters DM as in direct message, dmjoe.com, that'll bring you to my Instagram inbox. If you just send the word time for anyone that's listening to this, an automation will fire up and it'll give you that prompt that I use. Just as an example of how I use AI in a very practical way. And that spans my personal and my business life. But that's the first thing, is use AI every day and start to make it your thought partner on the most important parts in your business, which to me are time, taking advantage of your time, getting leverage on people in terms of how you lead people. And so the second thing that I do is all of our transcripts from Zoom are piped into a custom GPT that has specific prompts around them so that I can remember what happened in that conversation. I can ask things like, what was communicated but not spoken? So the undertone of the conversation is surfaced. And I can easily reference that next time I want to reference that conversation. It's like having a second brain. So if I have a bunch of direct reports or a bunch of private clients or a bunch of people that I'm communicating with, I can pull up our last interaction very easily and see what was talked about, what was communicated but not spoken, what were the action items. And then I can quickly just jump in there and go, oh yeah, I remember that conversation. Okay, great. And here's a detail that I can just pull and bring up. So I have immediate leverage on managing lots of people and lots of conversations. This is helpful if you're a CEO, This is helpful if you're a manager with any direct reports greater than 0. This is very helpful if you're a salesperson and you've got, let's say, more than 25 open, active conversations. Just being able to go back and be like, well, what did I talk to Alaric about? And what's the next step? Like, simple. It's easy. It's ChatGPT and Zapier or Make into a very simple prompt that's like, help me remember what was talked about and summarize the conversation. There it is. There you go. So like that kind of stuff, that would be like simple automations. But those are the two big ones. Like, how do I make it a daily habit? And then how do I use tools, simple tools, just to do what I'm already doing, but do it just a little bit better, maybe even a lot better. And I'll go into the tools that I use on a regular basis. But to me, just to make it super accessible to every business owner or marketer that's listening to this, those are the kinds of things. Another thing that I like doing is every time we have a sales call, and if let's say you don't have sales call, but you have client reviews or customer reviews, or on a regular basis, you're talking to your customers to check in on them, right? I want to have a set of questions that helps me understand, like, what are they struggling with, right? Or like in sales calls, one thing I love to ask is like right after you buy, when you're going through onboarding, is we have a question on Daily AI. We'll say, why did you almost not buy? Why did you almost not sign up? Because it's surfacing like the major objection that they had to convince themselves of before they made the purchase. And then we feed that into a simple spreadsheet. And then when I go to make content or give a keynote or get on a podcast, I'm going to take that objection and turn it into an obstacle that we can just walk around by explaining that away. If I handle it up front, it's an obstacle. If we have to handle it in the trial conversion process, it's an objection. So these are just little simple things where I'm like, cool, I just want to know what I can say in my marketing to make sales easier. I want to know what happened in the last conversation I was having with my direct report that's going to help them feel like this conversation is progressing and I'm serving them or giving them what they need. I could keep going, but those simple feedback loops, like closing the gap between like insight and action, those little things, setting up feedback loops, simple ones, allow you to go faster. The reason why is because clarity, being clear on what's going on, creates speed. And speed of implementation is definitely the most important thing in the game of entrepreneurship, is being able to make quick decisions and make the right decisions. So to me, that's how I think about using AI right off the bat.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that making it a daily habit is definitely such a big piece. And also having your team do it too. So it's one thing as an entrepreneur, but then really encouraging that adoption with your team and then asking the right questions. That's exactly right. And so one of the questions I always like to ask is kind of around the entrepreneur's mindset, which, you know, I really see as like kind of like a win. I even had this like coin made. I'll have to get you one of these, but win on one side, learn on the other side, right? It's like everything, two sides of the same coin. Everything's either a win or a learning lesson. And I'm curious, like, what's an example of a time that you had something that, you know, it felt like a failure in the moment, it felt like a big mistake, but you actually learned a lot from it that created a future win?
Yeah, I'll tell you an example. It's so funny that you say that with your coin. I literally, before this podcast, just got off a call with a private client of mine who is selling his business for multiple 8 figures. You know, it's a technology company, really sharp guy, really successful. And one of the things I said to him on the call is I said, one of the best and great privileges and honors that you have as an entrepreneur is to make one simple decision around everything that comes into your life, right? Is this a setback or a setup? Is this a setback? Is this something that's setting me back and it's terrible and, oh man, this sucks? Or is this a setup for what's coming next because I wasn't good enough yet and I needed this one. I needed this one to understand how to see around that corner because I've never looked around that corner before. And it's actually setting me up for where I really want to go. It's setting me up for that bigger future that I couldn't see for myself. And so, you know, in this case, he's trying to sell his company and it's in like deal after deal after deal just keeps falling apart. And it's not because he has a not attractive company. He keeps growing and things keep getting better for him. But every deal that he's talking about, the numbers just keep getting bigger and the acquirers keep getting more famous and the deal points keep getting better and better and better over time. So in the moment, it's like if you ask yourself, oh man, like that deal, we got to the final mile and that acquisition didn't take place. Boy, that was a real setback. Well, that's just a story you're telling yourself, right? Like, and you get to decide every day what story you're going to tell yourself around the things that happen to you. That's your right and your privilege to pause and choose and reflect. Or you could go, man, this is setting me up for something greater. And that's what we've worked on. And every time he's believed that, something amazing happens, right? And I think he's finally at the place where he's going to get a deal done. He's got like 4 or 5 people that want to get a deal done now, and they all look quite good on in terms of the terms. And I remember talking to him 6 months ago, and he had one potential acquirer, and the terms were meh, and the deal fell apart, and it really felt like a setback. But it totally was a setup because he was getting better at this. And the better he gets, the better the deals get. My friend Jesse Elder says, the better it gets, the better it gets. And I think that's the truth of it. If you decide that it's a setup for something better, not a setback to something worse.
Yeah, I love that. The setup versus setback, the win versus the win and learn. It's a learning lesson instead of a failure. Really great ways of looking at it. So we're going to get your list of AI tools rapid fire in just a second. But before we get into that, you talked about daily AI. Give another recap of all the value that it has, why people should go and sign up, and then where they can go to sign up for daily AI.
Yeah. So first of all, go to daily AI and just sign up. It's easy. If you want special bonuses, go to dailyai/partner. There's some extra cool bonuses on there. Things you can't get at daily.ai for special for your audience, Alaric. Look, if you have a list of more than 500 people, you're a real business that sells a real product or service and you're making money, and you're not engaging your list every single day or every single week over email, or you're just sending, I don't know, boring soap opera sequence emails that are trying to pass off as value, but they're actually just trying to sell more stuff, and your open rates are suffering, then you should definitely have a newsletter. I just want to make the case that you should have a newsletter. If you believe that that is true, then I think it's pretty easy for me to convince you that Daily AI is the best newsletter for you to have. If you want to have a newsletter where your newsletter is the product, like you're selling sponsorships and you're monetizing the newsletter in that way, then I think you should go buy from Beehive. Those guys are amazing. They're probably the best in the world at that. But if you're just a business that has, and you want to sell your stuff and you want to use your newsletter as a channel to get the attention of your people, nurture them and sell them more stuff, then I think Daily AI is not just the leading platform, but it's the best platform in the world at it. Because email's gotten harder, right? Like if you have a list and you want to go start sending a newsletter, you don't just blast it out to everybody, right? You actually have to like chunk the list down and send it to a few people at a time to warm the list up, because Outlook and Gmail have made it very hard to deliver to the primary inbox. But what's great about our platform is when you sign up, we'll analyze your list. We'll add something called metadata to better understand them. And then our machine learning algorithm will thin slice it and say, no, let's send it this 50 and then this 100, then 1,000, then 5,000 or whatever the case is. Because the first game of email marketing is land in the primary inbox. So that we have all these models to do a boring thing called land you in the primary inbox. But once you're in the inbox, that's where the magic happens. We talked about at the beginning of the call that, if you can get back to a prospect that's raised their hand as a lead and get back to them in less than 5 minutes, that they're 400% more likely to convert. Well, you can put your own ads for your products and service in a daily AI newsletter. And as soon as they click on that, they're going to get an email right away that asks them if they want to buy and tells them how to take the next step. Of course, you click that ad, it'll take you to your landing page or wherever you want them to go. But there's a speed to lead component that's going to help nurture them the minute they engage your ads, that's based upon their intent, what they want to get from you. Also, if you want us to be on the cutting edge of AI and basically send a personalized email to everyone on your list, which by the way has way better open rates and way better click-through rates, then I think we could be very helpful at Daily AI, and I would encourage you to check us out. Anyway, it's a 7-day free trial. I practice what I preach. If we can't get you the result in 7 days, then we don't deserve your business, or something went wrong and we'll fix it. But like I said, over 81% of the people on our platform have a 40% or greater open rate. We have a guarantee. Well, we'll just work with you till your open rate is in a good spot, or you don't have to pay us. I mean, it's a pretty great offer and it's a really good platform. It used to be this marketing hype where people were making big promises that they couldn't deliver on in this game of AI plus marketing. I like to think that Daily AI is one of the few products that actually delivers on our promises and does it really well. So if that's interesting, go to dailyai/partner. And we've got some awesome bonuses, some awesome stuff there. And I'd love to have you on the platform.
Definitely go there and check it out. We'll put the link down there in the description and in the show notes. Yeah, absolutely amazing, amazing, Joe. And just to round out the episode, of course, Daily AI is the first place people should go. But after that, what are some other AI tools that you recommend, kind of rapid fire style, to close out the episode?
Yep. Number one, and this was never on my number one before, but now it's ChatGPT. Back in April, they turned on the memory feature. It knows so much about you, and the more you use it, the better it gets. So use that for everything. And their image model, as we all know, because of the Ghibli Studio photos, is awesome. It's very good. They just made the product a much more valuable. Also, the trajectory with which OpenAI is launching a new supermodel, like a big LLM, is just blowing everybody else out of the water. So ChatGPT for many things. Claude for all things copywriting. I mean, that might be a cliche at this point, but Claude Sonnet 3.7 is by far the best engine for copywriting. I like to use Poe.com. Everything that's worth doing more than once, we turn into a bot inside of Poe. I like Poe because I can hot swap out the underlying large language learning model. So go from Claude to ChatGPT to DeepSeek to whatever. The next one is going to be Gamma.ai. I do presentations all the time. I have my team making me presentations all the time. You can make your slides in ChatGPT, copy paste them, put them in Gamma.app. It'll make you beautiful presentations. And you can set the settings so they're like on your brand colors. And it's really crazy how fast you can put out a beautiful presentation. The fifth one is Napkin.ai. If you've never used Napkin, if you like models and drawing pictures and frameworks, then Napkin.ai is probably the best place to take your ideas, your bullet points, put them in and get back a visual picture that explains what you're doing in the form of a model. I think in frameworks, I think in models. So I'm on Napkin every day making little pictures. I'll be on calls with people. They'll explain a concept. I'm like, oh, it's kind of like this. And I will show them a picture that I made in Napkin in like seconds that perfectly describes what they're saying in a framework. So I use this for sales calls. I use this with investors. I use this with our team because as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if I can make a framework that describes your idea better than the way that you described it, of course, you're going to think that I'm the expert. So Napkin's great. You can use it in presentations. That's my big hit list for things I use every single day. If you want to be a little bit more technical, Manus.ai, if you can get an invite code, I've got 5. If you go to dmjoe.com and tell me like Manus, MANUS, I'll give you an invite code. They're a little easier to come by than they were when they first came out. I think I have 5, so this is a very limited offer. It's awesome. It's one of the first true AI agents, and you're able to do pretty incredible things like deep research, turn that deep research into a PDF, write code, make web pages. It's got very good reasoning to work through tasks. And what I mean by that is that like you can ask it to do something, it'll reason through it, and it's pulling from a bunch of different models and using a bunch of different technologies amalgamated into one user interface. It'll actually like reasonably work through challenges better than almost any other large language learning model. It's really good. We're using that for a bunch of stuff like, for example, doing deep social media research on a competitor or an adjacent thought leader person that's crushing it on social, disaggregating, which posts are the most viewed, clicked, engaged, etc. And then breaking down that content into the hook, and then taking those hooks and coming up with 3 or 4 hooks that are similar, but for your market, and then turning those into scripts for ads so that you can very quickly get like 3 to 5 hooks, 3 body copies, and 2 CTAs just by modeling what already works for viral organic content. I'm just giving you an example. Manus is a workhorse. So those are my big hit lists. I use those tools pretty much every day. Those aren't the only tools I use. I have a massive laundry list of tools, but those are the big ones that we use that really move the needle. That if you were going to invest, $20 to $100 a month on something, I would hands down recommend all of those if you're a marketer or a CEO.
Love it. Really awesome list, and used most of the ones on your list, but you've shared a few new ones too, and a few that I definitely want to dive a little bit deeper into. So I appreciate all of that there as well. So thank you so much again for coming on, Joe. This has been fantastic having you on the Marketing Minds podcast. And definitely everybody who's listening or watching, go and check out Daily AI. We'll put the links down below.
Thanks, man.